Okay, Programming 11, now we're going to be making sliders. This is the start of my code here. I got my palette to have my lovely colors, and then we're going to have a few new things coming up. We have, first of all, a float variable. Ooh, what is a float? Well, it's a number that it can be a decimal number. So before we were working a lot with ints. Ints are great, but an int can't store 0.5 or 11 and a half or something. So if we want to be able to store numbers that can be between integers, we need to make a float, which stands for floating point notation. That's just how decimal numbers are stored in a computer's memory. It's kind of a silly name, but that's where it comes from, and you can just remember a float means it can store a decimal number. So it's called slider X because it's going to control a slider's position. And check out what I got. I'll put this over on the side while we just explain what's going on. Here's my slider. I want to make it so I can click on that knob and drag it from left to right and change something in my program. So you can see that my slider its X position is at the 400. That's why it's smack in the center when you start the program. And here's how I draw it. It's a line. It's just a line to make the track. And then I have a circle that its X coordinate is a variable, so that means I can change it, right? If it wasn't a variable, it couldn't move around. The Y coordinate is locked in at 300 because I don't want it to go up and down. I just want it to go left and right. And then it's got a radius, or I guess that's actually a diameter we discovered. So it's got a diameter of 50. You can change that to be whatever you want. But that number actually will be significant later on, so keep that in mind. And then I got, that's about it, actually. That's it. That's all I got. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that we're going to check to see if our mouse is in a particular position. We can see if we can control the slider. So we're going to use mouse release to start, but actually not the end of the story. So do check out what else we're going to do with this. So first of all, I'm going to check an if statement to see, hey, we're going to see if the mouse's X coordinate is on this line. So we're going to see if the mouse X is greater than 100 because it starts at 100 and then less than 700. That's just the coordinates for this particular line. Mouse Y is less than 700. X. Yeah. And if it is, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set slider X, that's the position of the knob, to mouse X. So it's going to go to the mouse. So let's see if I can make that knob move around. So I click on it. I just gotta tap, tap, tap. Look at that. It can move. Woo! Looks so good. And if I go beyond the edge, it doesn't work, right? I can't go beyond the edge. But I can click up here, though, which is a little bit weird. Like, why am I able to control the slider by clicking way up here? So that doesn't make sense. I want to restrict the clicks to be sort of in this range. I can click over here. That would be great. But not up here. I don't want to be able to do that. So what is this range? So this range really just creates a rectangle. So it's very similar to our rectangular collisions for our rectangular buttons. So I also want to restrict the Y coordinate to be, greater than this and less than this. So what are those numbers? Well, if we look at our line, it's drawn always at 300. Yeah, 300. And our knob is 50 thick. So it's going to be plus or minus half of that, or 25, from 300. So the top will be 300 minus 25, so 275, and the bottom will be 325, so adding 25. So I'll just add in those constraints as well. So hey, if mouse Y is greater than 275 and mouse Y is less than 325. All right, let's see if that works. So now I can't click up here or down here, but I can click there. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. We've confined our clicking to just be within the slider's space and not outside of the slider space. Still one problem, the slider doesn't really slide. I just click on it and it jumps. So if I wanted to slide it, I'd have to click, 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 click all the way along, and that's just not cool. That's not going to work. So how do we make it so we can control it as the mouse is moving? Well, mouse released just ain't good for that. Mouse released is not good for that. I'm going to try another function. I'm going to try mouse pressed. So mouse pressed is when the mouse goes down. And no, still doesn't work because like it's not like while it's being held down. So mouse pressed isn't good enough. Turns out there's another one called mouse dragged. Yeah, mouse dragged. That sounds right. So that means when you click and start moving it. So I click and start moving it. Oh, that's so nice. It slides, it slides. But watch this. If I just tap, it does nothing. I have to click and start sliding for it to work. So I can't just tap it over here and it jumps. There just doesn't seem to be like something that does it all. Dragging's nice, but so is tapping. So what I'm going to do just to solve that problem is I'm going to do it twice. Boop. I'm going to do mouse dragged, and I'm going to do mouse, it doesn't really matter what it is, I'll do mouse released. So now I'm doing it both. It seems a little bit awkward to have this code in two different places. Hey, that doesn't seem very dry. I'm repeating myself. So, it's 2 lines or 3 lines of code, so you might wonder if it's worth making a whole new function to describe, but I think it's probably a good policy to do. So I'm going to make a new function. I'm just going to call it void, maybe control slider. And I'm going to just copy and paste this code in here. Boop. You got to make sound effects for cutting and pasting. Every time I do it, I internally boop. So I'm going to make control slider a separate function. That code's contained inside, and I can just say control slider. And I'm repeating myself way less. Also, if I go to change these numbers, I only have to do it once instead of twice, and that means I'm less likely to make a mistake. So I can have control slider in 2 different places, but it really is one meaning. So that's probably the best I can do for making the control slider stuff work. So now I click, it jumps, it slides, it's looking great. Oh, our slider is doing something. Oh wait, no it's not. It's sliding, but that doesn't actually control anything. So we got one last step in this video, and that is to make slider X do more than just control the position of the knob. That's got to translate into something. So what I'd like to do is translate that into maybe the background. What if it controlled the background color? So I'm going to make a new variable called gray, I guess, or I don't know, shade maybe would be a cool number. And then shade, I don't care really what it equals. I'm just going to stick it in there. So here's the deal. Inside your, I guess we could put it in the draw function. It might be nice to put it in control slider. I'll have to think about that. I think I'll just try putting it in control slider. If it doesn't work, I'll put it in draw. What I want to do is I want to set shade to the slider X variable, because that's going to mean as it slides across, it's going to increase, right? So let's see what this looks like. Oh, I forgot a semicolon. It's not going to work out. So, oh yeah, and I guess I have to actually put shade somewhere. So let's, instead of background, let's put shade here. And if I was to move around, you can see it has some effect. It's pretty good, right? Like when I'm at way down here at 100, it's kind of gray. And as it goes up, it turns white. So my slider is controlling the background, but it's kind of stupid. I mean, stupid is another word, but it's kind of wonky. Like all this space is just white, and then down here it's kind of gray, and I can never get the black. So what's happening? Well, this is like 100, right? And remember, the shades of gray go from 0 to 255. So I can only get down to 100. I can't get down to 0, just because it's directly linked to the x coordinate. And as I go up, it quickly hits 255, and numbers that go higher than that are not changing the background color at all. Higher than 255, it's just ignored. So, it's at 800 all the way on the other end, but 800 doesn't mean anything different than 255. It's all just white, right? So, how do we get it to lock in so the bottom is 0 and the top is exactly 255? Well, in comes the map function. Oh, I love the map function. Instead of just directly assigning shade to be slider X's value, we can do a calculation where we sort of say, well, if the slider is 50% along the way in its range, then we'll set shade to be 50% along the range in its range. So what I'm going to do is use the map function. So what I want to do is map slider x. And what I do for the arguments, this is going to be quite confusing, so you might need to listen to this a couple times. So the first argument is going to be the variable that we're mapping from. And then there's two next arguments are going to be the range of slider x, or whatever that variable is. So slider x goes from 100 to 700. Now the next two arguments are going to be the desired range that I want shade to be in. So I want shade to be in the range of 0 to 255. So I stick in those as my next two arguments. And then map, what map does is it's going to convert slider x in this range to shade, which will be in this range. So I can sort of specify whatever range I want. So now that we can run it, we'll see that if I get down to the bottom, it's going to be black. If I get up to the top, it's going to be white. And it perfectly fits inside of that range. So that's what this is all about here. That's what this is about. I guess it was kind of wonky because, I guess my initial position of shade was 0. Pardon me. So it started off black, even though that's at 400. So, that's not super great. I don't know if I love that too much, but mostly it works. So another thing you could do is take this, instead of putting it in control slider, you could stick it right into the draw function. So I could stick it right in here. And then it's going to happen constantly. So it immediately will start checking and adjusting. Pretty crazy. So that's might have been a little bit confusing. So let's do another example. Instead of shade, what I like to do now is change it to like the thickness of the line. So I'd like to change this to be, let's rename this to be like thickness. And for thickness, I want it to control sort of the thickness of my shapes. So I'm going to say something like stroke weight thickness. So if I run this, it's going to be madness. Just like so fat. I go down to 0, and I can go up to like it gets so huge. It's just like, it's kind of cool actually. I kind of like it, but it's just beyond. I don't want to get so crazy. Maybe, let's say I want to make it so that once the slider is all the way at the other end, it's going to give me maybe 15 as my thickness. It's going to be maximum 15. So, how do we, I guess I don't really want thickness here anymore. Let's just set that to 0. So how do we change the map function so it gives us a range from 0 to 15 instead of, 0 to 255? So the idea is that this hasn't changed at all. This is still the range that my slider is sliding in terms of the x coordinates. That's what slider x takes care of. But now I want to change this range here. I don't want from 0 to 255. Let's say I want from 10, no, I said from 0 to 15. So I can change that range right here. So now when I run it, bottom is still 0, but top is now only 15. So I can kind of control the output range. This is sort of the range of the thickness variable. This is the range of the actual slider itself. This is where your physical sort of slider coordinates go, and this is the output range. Okay, so wow, that's a lot to think about. The map function is probably one of the hardest things we're going to do in the early part of the course. Usually this would be sort of the end of term 1, I think, actually, is how it goes. So yeah, the map function is a bit hard, so ask lots of questions about it if you're having trouble with it. And you're going to have lots of practice with it as you go to make your own sliders in the assignment. But that's all we're going to do for today. We'll call that good. So try to make some sliders. And here's an excellent exercise. Try to make a vertical slider. What would a vertical slider look like? I would give you, I think that would be an excellent activity to see if you could make a vertical slider, to see if you could test your understanding of how sliders work. Okay, so thanks everybody for your hard work today. We're going to call that the last video. And next class, we'll actually start creating our drawing program. We'll bring all these things together. I'll give you some criteria, some features to add in, and we'll go from there. Okay, thanks everybody.